did wake up to get that KO. And here's the wave crash into the grass type. Shouldn't be doing too much there. Yeah, not even bring Amoonguss down into the yellow with a critical hit. That's how ineffective that attack is.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he was just banking on it going into the Iron Hands in case the Ting Lu was asleep. But Amoonguss, not asleep for very long, is getting the Spore going. So this Dondozo, very, very low. Is just not going to be able to kind of continue that yawn lock that was going on earlier.
So what does Kyle do in this spot? Because there's really not a lot of offensive pressure, right, from these Pokemon. The Dondozo has to be asleep. Ting Lu might not be trained as offensively as maybe other Pokemon would. And you don't want to switch Dragapult onto the field, especially when there's the Flutter Mane being shown on the other end.
Well, it's a Ghost type now, so it's got to be a Shadow Ball. You can't just guarantee it with like a Dazzling Gleam. This is actually a really kind of interesting predicament. I think Kyle played the yawn situation really, really nicely. Managed to, of course, get rid of the Iron Hands. But my big concern is he's really not got much out of it, right? And when the Amoonguss woke up pretty early, now that Dondozo's asleep, I feel that the pressure comes down from Marco's side, right? And honestly, losing Iron Hands isn't even that bad. Iron Hands is now out of the way, gets a free switch into Flutter Mane, which can, of course, just apply pressure with huge moves every single turn. Just being able to put down damage finally. It does have the Pixie Plate as well, so it is going to be able to switch things up a little bit and just keep the pressure on while, this Dondozo is trying to wake up. He's also going to buy himself a little bit of wiggle room with this substitute.
I have been preaching the good word of substitute Pixie Plate Flutter Mane for quite a while now, ever since Pixie Plate became a legal option. So I'm very happy to see Marco using this strategy effectively, not getting punished whatsoever for that substitute. So that Flutter Mane is very safe right now.
That Flutter Mane is going to have a couple turns as well to throw out attacks. And the Ting Lu taunting here, kind of suggesting that it's, it's accepting it might be getting caught. The Dragapult's already taken the Terrestrialization, so it's not going to be able to change its type, and it is going to be hit super effectively when this Flutter Mane gets going. So maybe banking on him to be a little more defensive with the Ting Lu, maybe switch it out, but I think Flutter Mane can just kind of start sitting here and just putting down damage.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyle's Dondozo has been asleep for a couple of turns at this point, so there is a chance, if it is able to endure a hit, that it can try to wake up. But Marco is not wanting to let that happen, as it's time to terrestrialize the Flutter Mane into the Fairy typing, getting even more damage from a Dazzling Gleam or a Moonblast. Interestingly, Marco does not have Shadow Ball. His two attacks are Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam, so it doesn't have a super effective hit for the Dragon Ball, but it's still so strong that it could knock it out. Anyway, Dondozo goes down. Kyle has lost his bulky water type here in game 1. Then up next is the Gyarados with the Waterfall, super effective and has the flinch chance as well, but does not happen. Ting Lu with the Ruination into the substitute slot there on the Flutter Mane, and it is enough to knock it out, or get rid of the substitute, I should say.
Yeah, substitute fades there very, very easily. But, I mean, I think we're going to get back to where we were talking at the beginning of the game. I think at some point, this probably just becomes Flutter Mane versus Flutter Mane, right? And that's going to be a tough one. It really depends on how the rest of the board is set up. Just taking a look at the position now, though. I mean, Dragapult, yeah, it took the Terrestrialization. It's not getting all that it needs into that Flutter Mane, right? I think either way, you're probably going to struggle a little bit. So asking a lot of the Dragapult right now. But if it gets a knockout here, things could really turn. That said, I don't know if Marco's going to let the Dragapult just do what it wants. That seems a little bit silly, especially when you have the option to just protect or switch your Flutter Mane and paralyze it.
And the beauty of that Pixie Plate is you can switch your moves around. You're also not losing your booster energy. If you switch out, you still have access to boosting those fairy attacks later. But Dragon Ball with the Terra Blast into Amoonguss on the switch-in does do over half to it, but as we've seen, these Amoonguss seem to be perfectly trained for everything that comes their way, because it's just enough to activate the Citrus Berry, making the next one not be enough for a knockdown. There won't be a next one anyway, since Dragon Ball is going to get KO'd thanks to the Waterfall.
Yeah, that's a nice, easy knockout to pick up, and losing a Dragon typing has come back to hurt him a little bit there, as the Waterfall does get it. Not a bulky Pokemon. Ruination will land into this Gyarados and make it a lot more manageable, but it is going to be a lot of work for this Flutter Mane. Don't forget that Ting Lu's also taken a couple of Intimidates now, so those are going to start to add up when it comes to getting the damage done. The Amoonguss is pretty healthy, the Gyarados is pretty healthy. Of course, the booster energy does mean that the Flutter Mane mirror gets really, really weird, especially because of the move options available. on the side of Marco, but I think if he can put himself in a big enough position, maybe get it to sleep, then he's going to be able to tidy this one up.
Oh, but Kyle also has substitute on his Fluttermane. The difference on his end is he does not have the spread attack in the Dazzling Gleam and instead has the Moonblast and Shadow Ball. So Kyle hoping for a free substitute just like Marco had a couple of turns prior in this game one. Gyarados the Water Ball into Ting Lu, brings it down into the red. Is there going to be a flinch? We'll have to wait to see after the Citrus Berry activating there, recovering its health. So does Ting Lu get flinched? No! This Ruination does land onto Amoonguss, bringing it down pretty low, but the Pollen Puff is going to heal up the Gyarados back to full.
Like this play a lot from Marco, being able to understand that the Amoonguss can take the damage for a little bit, and then of course get the Gyarados back up to full health, because the Gyarados is probably going to be needed here, right? The Gyarados still has to deal with the Ting Lu, has to probably try and break the substitute on the Fluttermane, and this Fluttermane mirror isn't a mirror anymore, because the substitute is up, so still a whole lot of work for Marco to do, and Kyle, while he's not really been applying huge pressure back, and he is watching the Gyarados get healed up to basically full health, he's got to be feeling pretty good about the situation that he's in, just being able to kind of control the board. I mean, Dondozo didn't get super involved, but now, you're finally going to see damage from the Fluttermane. Now it's safe and ready to go behind a substitute.
Oh, the Shadow Ball! Not enough for the knockout into Amoonguss. It hangs on. This Waterfall goes towards the Fluttermane as well, damaging the substitute and making it fade. So Kyle is potentially threatened by a Spore here on the Amoonguss. Ruination does bring Gyarados back down to half HP after that Pollen Puff from the prior turn, but the Spore goes into Ting Lu instead of the Fluttermane. That could have been really disastrous for Kyle if Fluttermane got put to sleep.
Yeah, it's really, the focus right now for him is Fluttermane, so keeping that awake and healthy is really important. The problem is now with the Ting Lu asleep, Marco can just leave it alone for the next couple of turns. Doesn't need to throw anything attacking at it this turn. So that if the Fluttermane gets felled at some point, right, the Ting Lu just gets caught by the Pixie Plate, Terra Fairy Moonblast.
Yep, there is the Amoonguss going down. The downside of not having Dazzling Gleam is you couldn't try to get the spread attack there. Had to waste your Moonblast on the low health Amoonguss. Waterfall into Fluttermane is not enough for a knockout. Does bring it down very low though, and Ting Lu of course will be put to sleep here. So Marco is going to have to bring his Fluttermane back out. They're each down to their last two Pokemon. However, Kyle, because of that booster energy, is faster, but he just is not going to be able to knock them out.
He's faster, but I think he knows he doesn't have the damage, right? And he's always going to struggle. I mean, the problem is what you were talking about, right? No Dazzling Gleam. I've been a Dazzling Gleam fan for the whole season. I love spread moves. I think they're great. But being able to just single target there, it's like, okay, assuming Ting Lu stays asleep, you just double target into the Fluttermane. You either get it with Waterfall or you get it with Moonblast on your side. And then the following turn, like, Ting Lu can Ruination stuff. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know whether the Ting Lu was going to really go with a Stomping Tantrum Sand Tomb while it was being pressured down by Waterfalls or Pixie Plate, Terra Fairy Moonblasts. So it looks a little bit early, but Kyle understanding exactly where this game is going, assuming Marco just presses the buttons to get him there.
Yeah, and I think on Kyle's end, is it cool to call the Yarn correctly 4 turns in a row? Yes, absolutely. But does it accomplish as much offensively? No, the Dondozo is just sitting around. So I wonder what type of adjustment Kyle can make to have a little more offensive pressure on the field instead of just the Ting Lu and Dondozo chilling every turn trying to do a little bit of damage.
Well, that's something I've always thought about these Yawn plays, right? It's like, yes, you're forcing your opponent to cycle, but you need something alongside it that can capitalize. You need something, maybe just throwing out spread attacks, right? That's just everything that comes in is getting penalized for it. The rules are, hey, you want to come in? Cool, then I'm just going to do 20% to you. And there's only so many times you can take 20% before you're getting knocked out. It's 5, Joe.
Well, with leftovers, maybe you get it.
You get leftovers involved. I mean, if you're going to force your opponent to switch that much, you might as well have Stealth Rock.
Yeah, for sure.
Really capitalize
Somebody get Nick
on it.
Navarre here because he loves the Stealth Rock here in VGC. But let's see what Kyle's adjustments are. For now, it's the Iron Hands leading next to Ting Lu instead of Dondozo, but Marco with the Intimidate on the other end from Gyarados and Amoonguss.
That's a valuable Intimidate too, and wow, he's actually looking at, there's 4 physical attackers. So, outside of something like the Ting Lu, which can use Ruination to halve things down, This Gyarados is absolutely huge in his matchup. Yeah, of course, the Gyarados has to be a little bit scared of the Iron Hands, and it makes sense that he's fine to eat that, to then play that. But yeah, get the Gyarados out of there, see what you can do. Honestly, Kyle is, I think if this Gyarados cycles cleanly, he's going to have a really tough game on his hands.
The one benefit on Kyle's end is he goes for the fake out for the Iron Hands on the switch in is thanks to the clear body and Oblivious. It's only half of Kyle's Pokemon that are really hindered by the Intimidate, but it is currently the ones on the field that are doing less damage because of that perfect amount for Amoonguss to eat that citrus berry up. And the Pollen Puff into Tinglu, that's super effective. I like the little offensive pressure from Marco's Amoonguss.
Why not, right? You may as well just try and get some damage down, try and catch something on the switch and see if you can really mess it up. So it makes a lot of sense. Also, I think being mindful of the taunt on Tinglu, that's something a little bit more unique to Kyle's Tinglu. So being forced into the Pollen Puff there does look weird, but it makes sense when you just don't want to press Spore and then read the message that says Amoonguss can't use Spore.
Yeah, for sure. So Marco kind of thinking ahead just in case the taunt comes out. Kyle will switch his Intimidated Iron Hands out into the Dragapult slot here. So let's see what Kyle can do to try to force a game 3. Get a little bit of momentum on your side. The Tinglu does flinch thanks to the Spore, or excuse me, from the fake out, and the Spore goes into Dragapult on the switch in, meaning next turn will be Dragapult's first guaranteed turn of sleep.
Yeah, this is actually quite tough, I think, for Kyle, is that, you know, he tried to play this one safe, get the Dragapult in, and it got put to sleep. That's a big loss for him, because that Dragapult is actually really important, I think, in dealing damage, right? Like the Terra Ghost, Terra Blasts were doing good chunks in the last game, so not having access to that definitely puts him on the back foot a little bit. If he's forced to switch, you know, what is going to be able to be done? Also, this Tinglu, not terastallizing, could just be getting really hurt if this Iron Hands decides to go after it.
The Heavy Slam goes into the Dragapult, bringing it down to under half HP, and there is the trap from Tinglu onto Amoonguss. Amoonguss saying, all right, fine, I don't need to switch out, I can just put you to sleep.
Call an ambulance, but not for me. That Tinglu is now in a really dicey situation because it's sort of just sat there, and I think it's going to get Drain Punched at some point, right? The problem is like, okay, well, this is Tinglu's first turn of sleep right here. Dragapult might wake up. It's obviously not going to be super likely, but the Dragapult will not be able to take another Heavy Slam. So you focus on Dragapult for now, then you go after the Tinglu for a little bit, and then while you're going after the Tinglu, you put its partner to sleep. This is just a lot more efficient, and I think this is why Spore is a better sleep move than Yawn. Yeah,
for sure. But obviously Spore is not as widespread of a move, right, compared to Yawn, where many Pokemon get Yawn, but Spore is just a few of those pesky Pokemon. The Dragapult does not wake up, which means Iron Hands is free to knock it out, and you can see the disappointment in Kyle's face, getting so close here in round 8, but then falling victim to the sleep turns, and of course Tinglu asleep as well. You can't Spore anybody since it's already asleep.
Yeah, this is a tough break. Of course, the Amoonguss is getting worn down by the Sand Tomb, so that is something that he can look at, maybe bring something in to just finish the job on the Amoonguss and get rid of this really frustrating kind of combination of sleep that's going around. But overall, I think Marco getting rid of the Dragapult there is in a really good position.
Iron Hands does switch in here for Kyle, so you do have access to a Fake Out. And Fake Out, even though it doesn't do a lot of damage, it will stop Amoonguss from clicking Spore, and the Sand Tomb will start racking up even more. You know the Amoonguss is in a tough spot. It has already consumed its citrus berry, and the Sand Tomb is really starting to rack up.
Well, the tricky bit here as well for Kyle is you see him hovering the Fairy Terastallization on his Tinglu, and while that's you know, a nice typing here, you don't just want to get Heavy Slammed. You've seen what the Heavy Slam can do. It took out your Dragapult. Don't give him the benefit of being able to Heavy Slam into you. Maybe this turn it buys him enough room if it's a Drain Punch going that way, but that's sort of the big choice. This Amoonguss, though, is getting dangerously low.
Yeah, there is a Drain Punch, as you were saying, Adam, so that is now an ineffective attack into Tinglu, hardly recovering any amounts of HP. It also could be a preemptive terastallization, since Gyarados with Waterfall threatens it super effectively, as does the Fluttermane potentially on the other end. So that defensive Terra working out wonderfully for Tinglu and Kyle on that turn.
Oh, I don't think it's a bad terastallization at all. I just think it's interesting that you don't have enough pressure on the Iron Hands to stop it Heavy Slamming you the next turn.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that you gotta do what you have to do in the moment, right? Because Kyle is on the back foot. He's essentially not awarded the opportunity to think 4 turns in advance the way that Marco might be able to, since you have to do what's right in the now.
Yeah, because you're a little bit behind, you've got to be focused on right now to get it level. Then you can start planning ahead. This Drain Punch, not very effective, but it's at least getting him a little bit of recovery, right?
Yeah, brings him back up to full HP, so Stomping Tantrum would not be enough. Wild Charge is resisted going into the other side there, calling potentially either just a little bit of chip damage or a Gyarados switch in would have been a lot. But you see Kyle, that is the 3rd turn of sleep for Ting Lu, getting that maximum amount. And now Iron Hands is snoozing as well.
This is where he just pivots his attention, right? Now you've got the Iron Hands asleep, turn to the Ting Lu. Start dealing with the Ting Lu, and then, you know, your Amoonguss is going to get knocked out, which is kind of a bit of an end to the strategy. But if you've bought 2 Pokemon off putting one to sleep and then just going after it as soon as it's asleep, I'd say that's a pretty solid trade to be able to make in these games. So definitely something to think about. Iron Hands being asleep here. That is, of course, the Iron Hands on Kyle's side going first, so it feels like they're the same way. Oh, he's just Drain Punching him.
Yeah,
I'm not even worried about this Ting Lu.
He just does not care about the Ting Lu on the other end. Maybe not even worried about Stomping Tantrum. Remember, has been intimidated, so even though it's super effective, might not be doing too much here. Let's see how much Ting Lu can do. Yeah, it looked about 40%. So even the next one, especially after a Drain Punch, is not going to be enough. Wait a second, that just got rid of the Intimidate drop.
Yeah, the Intimidate drop is gone now.
And Amoonguss knocks itself out.
This seems like a very strange play from Marco. Like, yeah, of course he finally gets... I mean, yeah, he can put the Intimidate drop right back. My concern is maybe he's disrespected this Ting Lu a little bit too long. The Ting Lu was asleep and he didn't really go after it at any point. Maybe he's just confident that the Flutter Mane can deal with it, but Vessel of Ruin's going to hurt him.
Yeah, and I think in this spot you can switch your Iron Hands out on Marco's end, right? Because you get the Intimidate from Gyarados, as well as Gyarados is immune to a Stomping Tantrum. So if Kyle, you're in a difficult position, you might have to try to make some correct plays here to catch your opponent off guard.
I just don't like leaving the Ting Lu alone. It's such an irritating Pokemon when you had a good chance at it. Of course, this is going to be a battle of the Fairy Terrestrializations, and I think one is going to take better advantage of it than the other, but we'll see if it's going to be enough to get through this Ting Lu. You know, the Dazzling Gleams are going to start to rack up, but I just don't know. Maybe now is where you go after it with the Heavy Slam.
Yeah, Iron Hands never saw it coming in as it was snoozing as it got KO'd. And now the Ting Lu's going to recover some HP up thanks to the Citrus Berry, back up to about half of its HP. Wild Charge, though, into the Ting Lu, not enough for anywhere near close to the knockout. And here is the Sand Tomb. Now Iron Hands can't switch into Gyarados because it's been trapped by the Quicksand.
Honestly, I don't think there's any way to hit this Ting Lu for big damage, right? So it's kind of, you know, the Heavy Slam's not going to do much because the weights are very, very, like, close. Then you're looking at the Wild Charge, and it feels kind of eh. And then the Drain Punch is obviously not very effective. So that's why I don't like leaving it alone. You need the damage to add up. Ting Lu has no way to just recover itself up. You didn't even get it down to the berry until a turn ago. So feels like a lot of work left to do. But, you know, getting the Gyarados available, just being able to say at some point, hey, I'm at least going to be able to intimidate the Ting Lu again, definitely feels a lot better. It's not going to impact the Dondozo, but what does the Dondozo really do? Probably gets Thunder Waved. So the big thing here is making sure that Dondozo gets a little bit of breathing room so that the Iron Hands can't just Wild Charge it for huge damage.
Yeah, and on Marco's end, it's fortunate that Ting Lu does not have Protect because he can't try to Sand Tomb stall the Iron Hands into a knockout. But the Moonblast is more than enough thanks to the Terra Fairy boost to negate Ting Lu's ability, and Flutter Mane takes it out. Kyle is Dondozo versus the world right now. Drain Punch some solid, oh, thanks to the critical hit. That is gonna help Iron Hands crucially recover even more HP and stick around. Here's the Heavy Slam into Flutter Mane. Obviously enough, that big water type into the tiny Flutter Mane, and it's super effective. That's a one-hit KO.
Yeah, the big thing here though is, you know, that Sand Tomb, while it does a little bit of damage, if you're getting good little bits of recovery, like how long is that Drain Punch gonna buy him?
Yeah.
Yeah, how long is that Drain Punch gonna buy him? You gotta, Honestly, you just got to keep the pressure on the Dondozo right now. You could, of course, wild charge. You'd probably get knocked out in the recoil, but would it be enough? Yeah, I think it'd be a good trade.
Yeah, there's no Tatsugiri in there, Adam. So,
oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, you don't have to worry about it's not as bulky as you're used to.
That's very, very true, but just protecting it up this turn, trying to, you know, play the stall game into this Sand Tomb. Gyarados, yeah, trying to also make it a really tough turn for it, but we'll see if he's able to, you know, play the game he wants with this Dondozo. I just think this is maybe a touch too much for the bulky water to really do.
Yeah, so you're gonna leftovers recover a little bit, and Kyle thinking his turns through here, very crucially down to his last two Pokemon. The Iron Hand's done, taking the Sand Tomb damage as well, and there is no +2 defense on this end on this Tatsugiri-less Dondozo team that Kyle has brought to Columbus.
It's definitely unique, but it's still putting in a good amount of work. I mean, I think if the Dondozo had been given a little more agency early in the game, we could have seen a lot more out of it, but this just doesn't feel like the right time. I think at some point he's going to get Thunder Waved, he's going to get Drain Punched, maybe Wild Charged as well. So just Marco just looking to wrap this one up tidily. Obviously, Kyle just going to try and fire back whenever he can. Just try and weave in an attack and get this one back at least level. The Thunder Wave is not going to help that plan, though.
Yeah, definitely going to add a little more variance to the strategy, as Dondozo can potentially be paralyzed every turn. Drain Punch not doing too much damage. Marco wants to recover up more HP at this point so that he doesn't knock himself out from the recoil. And Dondozo's paralyzed. You can see Kyle shrugging his head there. Really needed to break through in that moment. Yeah,
it gets the leftovers recovery, but honestly, this feels like this one is pretty done. At some point, he's going to be able to, you know, hit him with a pretty monstrous Wild Charge from the Iron Hands. While he's doing that, this Gyarados is going to try and make it a really tough day at the office for Dondozo. Doesn't have anyone in charge. The Dondozo is running the zoo at this point, and it has not gone well. Without Commander Tatsugiri, feels very, very vulnerable here.
And also, like, I really like this Gyarados that has kind of done like a Landorus and Thundurus impersonation throughout the format, where you have the Thunder Wave and the Flinch Chance all in one Pokemon, so you can get paralyzed or you can get Waterfall flinched as well. Kyle goes for it, you gotta respect going for that double protect, but no, not gonna work. I think on Kyle's end where he might be frustrated is if he could put the Iron Hands to sleep, he would have been able to protect with the after Yawn that previous turn, but he got paralyzed. And then Iron Hands takes it out, and Marco is going to be 7-1 and moving on to day 2 here at NAIC.
Yeah, the game really felt like a very controlled game from Marco, being able to play kind of every piece of his team well. We didn't see anything out the Chi-Yu and the Garchomp, but didn't really feel like a key part of that matchup. I know you and I would have loved to see the Garchomp, but that clearly wasn't the time, right? And being able to hold that one back, I mean, the Garchomp doesn't have a Dragon-type attack. Dragapult does, and that's where I think he gets a little bit nervous and doesn't bring it all the way in. So definitely more to that team. A team that just quite comfortably won 2-0 still has some tricks that it can pull out in maybe the next couple rounds.
Oh, for sure, but even on Kyle's perspective, right? You had to get to 6-1 somehow with this strategy, so could potentially just be a bad matchup or a bad lead situation against Marco, and of course, Marco is no slouch as a former international champion, so not going to give you any free wins or anything in round 8 this close to those winning in scenarios here for the top trainers in the world.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, we've got so many players who can make it into day 2, right? And being able to do that around early has got to feel good and maybe set you apart from the pack a little bit. And Marco, you know, he's an international champion. He knows how to do that and just prove that very, very clearly here. We can, of course, just do a quick run back of the game. This Ting-Lu, you know, it managed to get some work done.
It had some merit.
Yeah, I really like the Ting-Lu, but, you know, Kyle was feeling pretty good here. He had that Yawn cycle going, but as soon as that got broken, yeah, look what happened.
Yeah, the Dragapult goes down. It would have been nice to see more out of this Terra Blast choice banned Dragapult, but just matchup dependent, really not helping too much. And it felt like Marco was never in a position that he was necessarily worried. Like, even when we were wondering, like, oh, the Ting-Lu, if you're just leaving it around, you can introduce some really scary things. But Marco was like, no, I got it. Slow and steady wins the race, and now I'm going to move on to day 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think him leaving the Ting-Lu in game number 2 was a little bit frustrating at times, but he did still have it locked up, right? Like, I wanted to see any damage go down on it, even if it wasn't very much, because it's just bits that would have added up and maybe made it a little bit quicker. But found the opportunity, got the Dondozo with the Wild Charge in the end, and I think that kind of shows why maybe don't play Dondozo without the Tatsugiri, right? I'm not saying it's bad, but like in that case, I'm like, yeah, I really would have loved a boost.
Yeah, those wild charges would have definitely been doing less damage, of course. But then, you know, maybe you don't have the Dragon Pult. There's a whole lot of factors that when you go down that rabbit hole on all the decisions you change. And of course, Kyle is the caliber of a trainer that can still win his round 9, not be too deterred from a tough loss on stream like this, still having that chance of winning in round 9 and making it onto day 2.
Yeah, he's still somebody in the running, right? Like being able to play that next round and get back onto it. Got to feel like as long as he goes away and just clears his head, it'll be absolutely fine.
I think, you know, we talked a lot about Ting obviously in that set, but a lot of it secretly was about the 2 Flutter mains. One of the key notes on Kyle's end was not having Dazzling Gleam for the spread attack, and one of the other parts on Marco's side was not having any ghost attacks, just having Dazzling Gleam and Moonblast really helping him out there.
Yeah, I'm a big Dazzling Gleam guy. I think the pressure it puts on feels really good, right? And I've always liked spread attacks. The fact that they had to make that choice though, because they were both going substitute, pretty impressive that they've both managed to find a way to play Flutter main that fits their team better.
Yeah, and what are the odds that they find each other here in round 8 is they're both substitute Flutter mains there. That's also pretty cool, and you can see how even though 73% of the player base has a Flutter main on their team here in the day 1 usage for the master stats, at least they're still definitely trained differently from choice specs to booster energy to pixie plate to, you know, all the different things, maybe even a trick room. We haven't really seen that. I know that was popping up at the last couple of regionals we had. It was the trick room, like really slow, really bulky versions of Flutter main. We haven't really seen too much of that so far today.
No, it's not been a big factor, but it's something to think about, you know, when you go back to team building and start to really mull over where you're going to go. That said, we can have our opinions on the substitute Flutter main, but we want to hear from Marco, who's down on the stage, ready to tell us about how it feels to get into day 2.
I'm here with the winner of our last round, Marco Silva. Congratulations, you get the win. That's also your winning into day 2. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling really great because this season I actually didn't really perform really well in international. I did really well in regionals actually. I made 3 top cuts. But yeah, international only did the top 32 in OCIC. So after not making day 2 at UIC, I definitely wanted to do like really well here.
Great, give me 1 second. All right, I think now people should be able to hear me, so we're good on this. They're able to hear you all along, so we are good here. But so internationals haven't necessarily got the best. What do you think it has been about the North America International Championships that you've been able to do so far?
I think.
I'm actually going to trade you real fast here, Mikes. Oh, back and forth. This is the only one that works.
Okay.
We're good. We got this figured out. We're good, guys. We're good.
Okay, so yeah, in general, I feel like this international is a little bit more different. They were expecting a lot of people here, so I kind of prepared to make sure that I had the team that was able to kind of be able to handle different type of opponents. I was usually using a more hyper-offensive team, and yeah, after not doing really well in the Italian regional, I kind of figured out that yeah, in these really large tournaments, I wasn't really supposed to use a really hyper-offensive team, because many times you just get 1 crit and it's over, so yeah.
All right, and then now that you've made your way into day 2 and you've gotten a chance to scope out the field and what's out there, how are you feeling about your chances with the team? Because we got to see that it was really strong.
In general, I think my team is really strong for at least like the most part of the team that I've seen, because many people decided to basically bring the team that was most comfortable with from like the whole season. So yeah, this team was perfectly made just to like fit in against this type of tournaments, and it kind of just doesn't as well into like teams that are not really the common.
And there definitely has been a couple teams that aren't as common. There's been this Screamtail running around, there's been Flamigo. Is there anything in particular out in the field that you're a little worried about, or are you confident with this team?
I actually lost against a really similar team to this one. So it was still Dondozo and Tinglu, but he also had Scarf Goldengo in the back. I hope to not play that team again, because of course I cannot just go for fake out and spore into everything, because he has Goldengo.
And then now going on forward in the competition, you've gotten this day 2, you're looking to go on forward. Worlds as well, how are you feeling about Regulation D, everything on the horizon there?
I haven't played as much in Regulation D, but yeah, I can kind of see like what's exactly strong in that format. But yeah, there's definitely gonna be like a lot to be seen, especially because it's gonna be the actual first measure of the regulation. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting.
Well, I cannot wait to see how you're going to do in day 2 and at Worlds, but congratulations. Before I let you go, do you have any shout outs, any final words?
Definitely shout out to the guy that actually built the original team. He was actually 10-2 in the Italian regional, but he had to drop out to go to work. So yeah, after that tournament, I just asked him, okay, so this team is really strong, you're a really strong player. Please let me, let me get your team so I can kind of like prepare for NIC. Of course, I changed some stuff, but yeah, shout out to Marco for, of course, giving me his team that he played in Turin. And of course, a shout out to my mom that is always supporting me, and my little brother, of course.
See them in the crowd, so they must be proud. That's amazing stuff. Congratulations once again. Best of luck going on into day 2. We still have a little bit more Pokemon to our day though, so we're going to be taking a short break, but be back soon.
My name is Gavin Michaels, and I'm from Los Angeles, California.
Wave crash from Palafin into Corver Knight. That is a knockout, and Gavin's California dreaming has become a reality here down under. Gavin Michaels is your VGC 2023 Oceania International Champion.
I never expected this, so I'm still just like flabbergasted. Haven't even processed it towards excited, still like confused more than anything else. This win means that I can still hack it, and I might be better now than I was when I was considered like one of the best players out there. It's like, hey, who knows what the new era holds. Winning Worlds would be the culmination of everything that I've worked for in the past 12 years of playing VGC. I've had the regional results, I've had the national results, and the international result now. Worlds would be the one thing left.
Hey Pokemon trainers, Joe Brown here. Let's take a quick look at some highlights from the 2023 Pokemon VGC Regional Championships in Charlotte. This was the final event using the Regulation B rule set. Fluttermane continued to be the highest usage Pokemon on over 54% of all teams in Charlotte, and that number rose even higher to 61% of all teams in Day 2. Our Masters Division Finals was a battle between tri-state trainers Justin Karras and Joe Ugarte. Justin's Fluttermane and Great Tusk team was poised to be the strongest team in Regulation B. And as the last trainer standing without a Fluttermane, Joe Ugarte felt confident in claiming his second regional championship. Luck was on Justin's side as he claimed his first regional title with a great send-off to the Regulation B format.
Because at this point, his Great Tusk is going to be felled as he throws in the towel. Justin Karras will be your regional champion here in Charlotte.
Make sure to check out Pokemon.com/compete for all the information you need to follow or join in on the action at future events. Hey Pokemon trainers, welcome to Pokemon Championships History, a series where we showcase important matches throughout the history of competitive Pokemon. Let's flash back to the 2015 Pokemon World Championships in Boston, Massachusetts. This classic moment happened in the Seniors Division Championship match between Mark McQuillan from Great Britain and Koki Honda from Japan. VGC 2015 was a season most remembered for two things: Mega Kangaskhan and Japanese trainers dominating the metagame.
Japan this year came in full force. I mean,
It really did.
yeah, they just took the junior division championships in the Masters division. They're pretty much guaranteed. I mean, 7 out of 8 top cut players in the Masters division were Japanese, so Japan's here to play, and I'm pretty sure Koki wants to be able to
So this will
try to set up a clean sweep.
This will be
for all
what
three
decides the
divisions.
clean sweep.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
Mega Kangaskhan was the queen of VGC in this era, as nearly 67% of all top cut teams across all 3 age divisions had Mega Kangaskhan on their team.
Mark was the last trainer who could stand in the way of Japan claiming all 3 VGC titles in Boston. Mark was also aging up into the Masters division for the 2016 season, so this would be his final match in seniors and his final chance at redemption. Mark had been on the world stage before. At the 2014 World Championships, he fought through the tournament only to lose in the seniors finals match. So with the weight of the world on his shoulders and the fear of finishing second 2 years in a row, Mark had to find a solution for Kangaskhan, and his answer was Machamp. But before game 1 could start, the casters had one simple question.
Mark M, does that M stand for Machamp? Question.
Mark felt incredibly confident in this matchup. He even winked at the camera when he correctly predicted a Landorus switch in. Cresselia disrupted much of Koki's game plan by setting up Trick Room and skill swapping away key abilities. When it was finally knocked out, it was time for the crowd favorite to join the fray.
There's the Machamp, the crowd is going wild right now.
Machamp's ability is No Guard, which disregards accuracy and ensures that all attacks hit without fail. Mark used Dynamic Punch as the main attack because without its dubious 50% accuracy, it is now 100% a problem for Kangaskhan.
That's a no guard Dynamic Punch, a move that normally has 50% accuracy, but thanks to that ability, never gonna miss.
Mark finished up game 1 in convincing fashion and was now 1 win away from fulfilling his dream of becoming world champion. The crowd was captivated by Cresselia and Machamp, realizing they were the ideal brains and brawn combination that was capable of defeating Kangaskhan in a format ultimately warped by its success.
Did you ever think that you'd see a parental bond Cresselia and a Machamp in the senior division final championships here?
I don't think that ever crossed my mind once.
As game 2 progressed, Mark built up momentum by making all the right plays. The will of the crowd had been determined, and Mark was eager to give them the Machamp sweep they so desperately wanted.
We're gonna see Dynamic Punch into that same slot. Ladies and gentlemen, will it pick up the knockout? It picks up the knockout. It's a crit. That is a critical hit on an incoming Mega Kangaskhan. Lost its parental bond and now lost its will to fight. Dynamic Punch is just gonna punch this Heatran right in the dome. Is it gonna pick up the knockout? It picks up another knockout.
Mark breathed new hope into VGC by showing that no Pokemon can exist without counters.
The match was forfeited. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello and congratulate, applaud, give a huge hand to your new Seniors Division World Champion, Mark Machampion McQuillan.
Mark and his Machamp played a flawless set in the finals and brought a title back home to Great Britain. He also redeemed himself from his 2014 loss and gave VGC trainers around the world one of the most dominant and memorable Pokemon matches of all time. Thank you for watching, and let us know some of your favorite moments in VGC history by using the hashtag #PlayPokemon.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the end of our day number 1. We only have one more Swiss round to go, and myself and Adam Doricott are going to be taking you through that. But what an exciting day of action so far, and we are only one game away from seeing who will be making it forward to day number 2.
Honestly, it's been great, and looking through the pairings and what we had coming up in round number 9, it was pretty tough to pick which match we wanted to feature. I know there's some back and forth between some of us. We ended up making a choice, but there's so many great matches out there on the field that I think are going to be so impactful to people's tournament runs, right?
Well, with such high stakes as well. We've been talking about this throughout the day, that our players that are participating in the Video Game Championship Series this weekend are fighting for their championship points for their Worlds invite if they're trying to shore that up, or they're in the race for that Day 2 invitation. And that's going to be really important, especially when you look at how close that gap is between 1st through 12th.
There was a lot of people in a really tough predicament in North America. I think once you get past the top 4, who I felt were largely safe, then the bottom 4, like 5, 6, 7, and 8, were definitely up for debate and up for discussion. And a number of the people we've seen on the stream this weekend are people in that debate. And I think in most instances, they've answered pretty well, right? Like Zachary Thornburg, who just jumped in, he came on and managed to take a comfortable win. So proceeding forward in the tournament is going to help him secure that spot. Of course, there's a lot more Pokemon to play tomorrow. We can take a look at exactly where we are in this tournament, though. Yeah, I mean, Zachary Thornberg 7-1 has already made it through. Gavin Michaels 7-1 already through. Wolf Glick, who's actually somebody definitely chasing down the top 8 at 7-1 as well. So got to be feeling good. Number 1 through 8 as well has a nice mix of trainers from around the world. Chopper was one who's been in the conversation a lot this year, sitting comfortably at 8-0 as well. So a number of kind of people already locking up their day number 2 and being able to sit comfortable and start thinking about, okay, how can I lock up this day number 2 at the World Championships, not just at the North American International ones?
Yeah, I mean, Henry Rich is another one of those players that you have to consider in the conversation for the Australia race that's happening over there as well, because there are a few spots up for grabs for our Australian players to be able to make it through to day number 2, and the competition is still heating up for Europe when it comes down to those 16 spots up for grabs. So now when you take a look at some of the matchups, this is where the going starts to get a little tough. You've got Alberto, Joseph Ugarte, Nick Navarre, James Beck, and Colin Heyer. Those are all players that are in the top 12 of the championship point leader to get that day 2 invite.
I mean, I'm just looking at some of these matchups, right? We're going to feature Colin and James Beck, so we're going to talk about that at length. We'll get to that later. But Nick Navarre versus John Hu, I mean, we saw John Hu on stream earlier today take down Eric Rios, and that's like a big name to be able to take down. So John obviously falling down a little bit since that earlier stream appearance. But that means only one of Nick and John is going to be able to make it to day number 2. And it's kind of a shame. It's just the way tournaments go. And to be honest, Brendan Lewis, a name returning from a good few years ago, I think it's fair to say, going up against Joe Ugarte. So being, asked the big question. It's like, can you take down one of the best when it matters the most? And Alberto Lara, somebody who's done so well at the internationals this year, popularizing a team of his own, playing it so well, being asked the question in round number 9, are you still able to do it? Or, is it maybe time to change things up a little bit?
Alberto at this point too just wants to be able to get some more championship points to keep the momentum rolling for his placement right now in the championship winning leaderboards. I think he is still in a very safe position in those top 4 spots, but you can't rest. You can't rest easy until the tournament is over and you've put everything on the line.
It's actually insane how close it is at the top, and like I said, 5 through 8 is really, really dicey. So a lot of Pokemon still to play and a lot of very impactful Pokemon still to go when it comes to some of these tournaments. But I think taking Colin as our stream match makes a lot of sense. He is still sat in 8th, and he's it's up to him now. He's in control of his own top 8 day 2 destiny, and that's true right now as well, where, win this one and just keep on moving. If he doesn't win this one, his championship points, at the end of the day, we know exactly how many he's got, and there is going to be a huge target on him to be able to say, hey, like, this is the number you got to beat to bump me out of top 8. Particularly when people directly below you, like Wolf, are already in day 2, are already at 7-1. So it's a really big match for Colin here.
It really is. I think for all of our players too, taking a look at our players that are in the top 12 of the leaderboard, all of them are sitting at X2 or better.
Yeah.
So that's where it really starts to get interesting, is all of the players that are sitting at X2, not all of them can move forward. They're not all going to win their matches. And then you can start kind of putting the pieces together and seeing how that will fall and kind of settle itself as we head into our Swiss rounds tomorrow. But yeah, still one hurdle ahead of us. And so maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but hey, it's just exciting to look at our players just kind of fighting for those day 2 spots.
Yeah, I think the fact that we have such a big race on, and actually a testament to the players who are in that race, right? The fact that some of these players, it's a crazy race that you have to keep up with, but these are consistent players. Like Colin's been going to events and doing very well all year. In fact, he's only in 8th. You think, like, what a great season he's had, but he's only in 8th, which I know a lot of players would love to be in that seat, but I'm sure he really wants to keep it going. Zachary Thornberg, another one, sitting at 7th now. You think, what a great season he's had. He's been turning up all over the globe, putting in performances at ICs and regionals alike, and he's still just in 7th. So honestly, the impact of an IC win onto your points totals, or at least a finalist appearance, is really big. And with North America, we think about Australia had 2 North Americans in the finals there, in Gavin and Alberto. Paul was able to take that down as well. So You know, there's a lot of championship points coming North America's way this year, and that has been really, really big. But the players are on stage, they are ready to go. Yeah, it's going to be Colin trying to keep that top 8 run alive. Top 8 run and, of course, this tournament run at NAIC. So it's kind of a double header of pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot on the line for this one, that's for sure, because only one of these 2 players can make it forward to day number 2, and their teams are incredibly similar. This is a tale that we have seen play out throughout the course of Regulation C. At the very beginning, we were looking at Palafin Balance being one of the top teams sitting at the top tables. And we're going to see a bit more of the same here as James is going to be rocking the Palafin, bringing that back, but with the Pelipper as well to help make sure you're amplifying a lot of that water type damage. But on the other side of things, Colin is going with a Balance team that's a little bit more updated, and that's going to be the Azumarill instead of the Palafin, but the Pelipper as well. So who's going to actually bring the Pelipper?
I really like both of them bringing the Pelipper, right? You can't bank on your opponent, you know, not being able to get there. You know, and you just kind of feel a little bit underwhelmed. I think if anyone can drop it, it's James, because the Palafin can definitely function on its own. The Pelipper's more of a nice to have. I think the boost that it gives the Azumarill is actually what puts it over the edge, right, with something like Liquidation. So being able to play around that feels really, really important. But, you know, overall, there's so many minute details that are going to be impactful in this game. Even the matchup between the 2 Fluttermane is going to be really, really important if they are just trying to deal with each other in that regard. Excited to see how this one goes. And honestly, James is kind of out here trying to represent the Palafin, because it's been really underutilized, underwhelming in this tournament so far.
Really has been. I mean, I think a lot of that speaks again to some of the tech choices that have popped up over the last few months. I think Palafin just a little bit harder to run. I think Colin has one of those answers on his team right now. You've got the Iron Hands that's going to be pressuring down with that super effective electric type damage. You've got the Pelipper that doesn't want to see that either, but you have some really nice answers to Colin's team on James's side, with the King Gambit being able to have that super effective dark type damage into the Golden Go, and being able to also put on so much pressure when you're also looking at its ability to terrestrialize to the dark type with the black glasses to boost that too.
Yeah, I think there's this isn't going to be a particularly slow game. Outside of the Amoonguss, I think there is a lot of damage potential from both sides, and I think that's something that we're going to see. There it is, Palafin right into the lead with the Arcanine, bit of a classic really, one of the better leads that we've seen over the past couple of months, and of course being able to go up against the Golden Go Iron Hands. This makes things really interesting in my book, because the Iron Hands now knows, in most cases, you'd have to worry about the Palafin, it's going to switch. Now, as we've seen on big stages before, if you leave the Palafin in, you get free damage. And that's a move that I'm always excited to see players try, as it did win an EUIC, that move.
It did, just terrestrialize it right away, get that extra boost to your damage from that Terra Water, but it's not going to be any switches. It is a protect here from both the Pokemon, and that does help negate some fake out pressure if Colin decided to go for that. And so, yep, that's just not going to work into the Arcanine.
Yeah, not going very well there, but James, you know, now knows about this potential trick, and the trick is actually really awkward here, because he knows it's got trick, it's an open team sheet, right? So he knows he's getting a Choice Scarf. He's getting a Choice Scarf somewhere, unless he switches out the Golden Go. And if he switches